welcome to Abnormal Presence Touring Talkies. I'm Kamla Iyer. Assamese women weave dreams on their looms, said Mahatma Gandhi during his first visit to Assam in 1921. Today, our Sari-torial Safar takes us to Assam, a state that practically has a loom in every home and where women weave for their families and themselves. My guest speaker today is Jonali Saikia Khashnabish, founder of HIA Social Enterprise, where she works with women and provides various interventions to create livelihoods for them. She's also the managing trustee of Heart Crafted Foundation and a livelihood consultant with a focus on women's livelihoods. Jonali had no design or textile background, but a deep passion for leveraging talent better and creating livelihood for women. What better place to do this than in Assam, where practically every woman weaves skillfully for her family? She saw an opportunity for these women to make a better income for their skills and thus set out to create an idea for textiles that could be sold to an outside world. HIA has since supported about 500 women in 3 clusters. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Jonali to this show today and to hear her share her experiences of upskilling women weavers through interventions and creating sustainable livelihoods. So welcome to the show, Jonali. It's such a pleasure to have you here today with us to discuss about the Assamese weaves.
Thank you so much, Kamla. This is really a pleasure. And I'm very glad that you're including Assam in your beautiful concept. And I think this will be something that is good for me as well to be able to speak about. So thank you.
So to begin with, could you take us through the history of Assam's weaving tradition?
Sure. Weaving or textiles, when we say the word Assamese weaves, what comes to you? From what I have understood from talking to people is the most common things that come to you are, number one, the colorful motifs, the presence of colors, and of course some silks, which are possibly not very common. So these are some of the things. Then geometrical patterns, right? Then color. So these, I think, are the pretty much make the high point in terms of a landscape. So if we dig a little deeper into this, since you're asking me a bit on the history of the textiles, then I think I'll have to go as far as back to the days of the Mahabharata. It's that old. So apparently, and this is what I found from doing some research, that there is mention of Kamarupa, which was the original name of Assam, in Mahabharata, and that how the weaving heritage, in terms of fabrics, in terms of silk, finds mentioned there. In Arthashastra, there is apparently a reference to something called dakula, and which apparently is like a golden silk thread. And when researchers found a little more, they found out that it is nothing but the muga silk. And how did they find out? Because of the similarity of the way of weaving, where the weft is, the muga silk weft is always made little wet before weaving. And that's the same thing that's been documented in the this great scripture. So this is the history. So it dates back so many thousands of years back. And if we come a little closer, in the entire time span of history of the last 1,000 years or so, we can see that there was a lot of trade that was carried on between Assam and China through Tibet. Yeah, and it was mostly the muga silk. So muga silk has always been, a very important item of trade, and apparently also fetched handsome revenues to the state, and as well as got a lot of recognition. In fact, I also read that a lot of kings, the kings of Assam, the ancient Assam, used to present this as a gift, muga silk fabrics, to other kings. Like they had a practice, right, of sending gifts to other states, and that's one of this is the choicest item of gifting. So that's how it was. And then if we come closer to, let's say, like I said, the last 1,000 years, we'll see that that's about the time when the migration of the Mongoloid stock of people happened from the Southeast Asian countries, because like you know, Assam is geographically situated at the far end of India, which borders Tibet, China, Myanmar, etc. I mean, when I say borders, I mean, you know, it has Myanmar, it has a direct connection. Others, you have to pass through other areas. So there was obviously, because of this connection, a lot of people that had come over a period of time and settled in this great valley, the Brahmaputra Valley, because it was an extremely fertile piece of land. Latter part of the 12th century, there was the great Shan dynasty, race in China. They came over to India, or rather to Assam, and settled here, and they stayed on to become the great Ahom dynasty that we all know about. And prior to that, there was already the sort of the Thai race, which came, and they were the original, the Bodos, which are the original inhabitants of Assam. And then from the west, of course, the Caucasoid people came. So it is, this whole land, is an amalgamation of different people, and each of them brought their own weaving practices. And that's how the whole culture of weaving got further reinforced. Whenever we think of Southeast Asia, or weave, and and the looms that you see there are similar to the looms that are found in Assam as well. So that's how the practice of weaving also continued in Assam, and the women started becoming the ones who kept the weaving practice alive in every home. Also, what happened was, because the Ahom dynasty, like I said, they ruled for almost about 600 years in Assam. So what happened was that they had a lot of time, right, to establish their kingdom. So one of the things that they had done in around the 17th century is to introduce weaving as a mandatory activity for women and in their homes. So, that's how the practice of weaving became very strong. And also, they had to even donate or give some amount of their weaving. It's actually not just weaving, it's also spinning, because in Assam, silk is, also like a cottage industry. Yeah. They had to spin the thread, and they had to give a particular amount of thread, the yarn, to the king. And that's how it became mandatory. And that's why we say that, in Assam, since every woman had to weave, even the queen was not spared. She had to weave her own cloth as well. And then I just want to mention that it's not as if only women were weaving. In fact, men were also weaving, and that's how the commercial clusters, which we have today in Assam, were actually set up. Okay. And in fact, men, also started establishing their craft, and some of the expert weavers were actually patronaged by the king to come and settle in a particular place, which we know today as Hualkusi or Swalkuchi, right? Which is the weaving village of Assam, the silk village of Assam, as we all know, also called the Manchester of the East. And that's how the commercial weaving, actually started taking shape. And also some of the people hearing Assam's fame or name with weaving came from other parts of India and made this their home, and they brought with them their own practices. So there's been some amount of synthesis of cultures, techniques, practices, which they sort of merged, and it became what it is today.
But I can clearly see there's so much of rich history there, and the fact that every house practically has a loom and weaves is something very unique to Assam. And some other thing which is very unique we've heard to Assam is this beautiful mekhela, sador and gamosas. So could you tell us a little more about those, and what type of occasions do people actually wear them? And if you could throw some light on those beautiful pieces of fabrics.
Sure. Yes. So you rightly picked out the two most important fabrics, the gamosa and the mekhela chador, because this is, these two are the most important, in focus, and which actually the rest of the world sees, and which has been woven, along with other fabrics. Of course, there are many other fabrics, but these two have really been sort of the primary ones. So what is the gamosa? So yes, I think the gamosa is it's a very interesting piece of fabric. It's actually nothing but a fabric that is made of cotton, or sometimes of silk as well. but mostly of cotton, in a white background with red stripes and red decorated work on either side. But this fabric means so much. It's typically about 1.5 meters by 80 centimeters. And, just like, your normal, maybe, any towel that you might use at home, or, any other woven towel. But in Assam, this fabric means so much, So what it essentially is, literally it means Gamosa, which means to wipe the body, right? So it is in that sense similar as a gamcha, which is found in other parts of India. But in Assam, it's much more than just wiping the body. It is a fabric which literally is the cornerstone of the social, the religious, and the cultural life of Assamese. So first of all, it is a token of respect. You present it to someone you respect, or someone in a social gathering. It's mandatory. Second, it is a token of love. So you present it as tradition. You have woven, a woman has woven the gamosa herself and presented. I mean, what better could it be, right? You make it with your hands and then you present. So it has a great significance. You normally present it during the Bihu for sure, and you can present it at any other time as well. Third, it has a great place in the religious landscape of Assam. Now, of course, in a slightly modified way, it's much bigger as a piece of cloth. So, like you might know that Assam is largely a Vaishnavite faith of Hinduism. So there is no place for, I won't say no, but primarily it is a faith which is based on no idols. And, even the modes of the worship halls are called namghars, which is something like a mandir, but it's also a community gathering hall where people come together, pray together. So in these places, and the main book and the main sort of the chief sacred book is placed in a particular area inside the namghar. So that place, which is really the sanctum sanctorum of the namghar, has to be having a gamosa, again on a very well richly decorated wooden pedestal. And that is another important thing, that every year during Bihu and other important occasions, that has to be replaced with a new one. And there are certain words that are written on it, like the names of the gods are written, and a picture of the Bhagavad Gita, or rather the kirtan that our sort of saints have written. They are also woven. So it's a larger piece of cloth, and it's put there. So this is what it is it's not gamosa. Actually, it's a much, maybe 4 times normal gamosa, but it is how it is. And the other use of gamosa is also during weddings. So some of them, the bride side and the groom side, they have to have special gamosas, which are given to the groom and the bride. And also, they are woven separately. They have to be woven only one piece on a loom. And, that's how, the significance of gamosa goes to the wedding. And of course, it's also used for other utilitarian purposes during a wedding itself. And of course, there are many other uses, like during a Bihu dance, so the uses are like endless. So in today's times, I'm sure you must be seeing a lot of people also, adorning the gamosa, in the country. And it's a handy piece of cloth. It's also makes a sort of particular statement about, handiwork of people, the craft of the region, etc. So that's in short about the gamosa, but it's really the inspiration behind the weaving activities of the region. Now the mekhela sador. So mekhela sador, of course, is the garment of Assam, of women. So that's one very significant difference between the rest of India and Assam. In fact, you might know that in Northeast India, almost, sari is there, but there are different expressions of the women's attire. Assam, it is mekhela sador. Then within Assam itself, there are other tribes who wear other kinds of attires, which are somewhat similar to mekhela sador at times, sometimes a little different as well. I think, the origin again of the mekhela sador has something to do with the sarong, because mekhela sador is essentially a 2-piece garment. Now the thing is, because Assam, had so much in common with the rest of India as well, there has been a very nice confluence, a very nice influence of the rest of India. So that's how after wearing, the way you drape it, the kind of work you have on it, it looks like a sari after you've worn it. I'm sure you've seen enough, right?
Yeah.
But it is different. It is two pieces for sure. It is shorter than a sari. It is about, the lower portion is a stitched garment. Stitched is like a cylinder. So I know that in Kerala also we have the same two piece, but it's a little different from Kerala's Mundveshri, because this one is stitched, the mekhela stitch, and also it is extremely richly decorated, depending on various uses. It is made of different kind of yarns. So it is really the expression of a woman's weaving craft on the mekhela sador, just like the sari is the expression in the rest of India. So mekhela sador can be made in cotton, it can be made in silk, and it is used definitely for all social, cultural, and religious functions, and it's also worn at home. That's a chief sort of outfit at home as well. It's very utilitarian. I must say, it's very functional, even to someone like us in the modern times, because the bottom portion is separate, so you can sort of also at times mix and match, etc.
Yeah.
It's like you were asking in what kind of occasions it's worn.
Yeah.
Definitely for weddings, etc. For Bihu dance, you typically wear only Muga mekhela chadar, because that is associated with you don't really wear any other mekhela chadar, but only Muga mekhela chadar for the Bihu dance. So that's another thing. At home, you wear cotton, and for weddings and other celebrations, you wear the very extremely silky and soft, mulberry silk, which is part in Assamese, and maybe airy silk also.
So you had shared with me that you had a very beautiful gamocha which your mother had woven with her own hands. Oh my God!
Okay, so now this is 65 years old. She was working as a teacher. She was a teacher. She had started out, and then so that's how normally the women work on. Sometimes they are full-time weavers, but sometimes it's also an additional activity that you do for as a hobby. So after she would come back from school, she would weave, and I asked her that how many do you weave of this? So she said, I wove 10 of these. I gave some to my brothers, some to my mama, and of course I think one to her parents, one each. And then she thought, hey, why don't I keep one of these for myself? And that's how this one is, we are seeing the light of the day. This one is actually woven in silk.
So you had mentioned that Assam is a nice melting pot of different communities. So could you tell us something about the various communities that coexist together in Assam, and what are their own weaves which are unique to every community? Could you tell us something about that?
So yes, it is very true that Assam is a melting pot. It's a veritable gene pool. There are about 200 distinct, tribes and different kind of people. Now, that's not only Assam, that's across Northeast, and a significant number of them reside in Assam. And like I said, it's because of the unique geographical position that, Assam is in and the Northeast is in. So, yes, so because of this, what is interesting is that every community, who've migrated over a period of time and settled in this valley, have retained their own as well as assimilated into the larger Assamese fabric. So when we say Assam, it is actually a representation, a composite of many different kind of people. There are about 8 major groups. So the first is, let's say, the people of the Brahmaputra Valley. So in Assam, there are 2 major rivers, Brahmaputra and Barak, and people who live in the Brahmaputra Valley around it are the people who are referred to as the plains people, because it's a land of hills. So, plains and hills are 2 distinct topographical, regions. So the plains people are the people who have typically, let's say, come from, many centuries ago, like I said, of the Caucasoid origin, or have over a period of time, integrated into the larger fabric of the, of the place, and they have been there. So that's one, that's Miss Plains. Then if we look at each of the unique, communities, they are, let's say, the Ahoms, which are, of course, the largest, one of the largest, groups. Then the Bodos, who are, like I said earlier, also were the original settlers of this valley. Then there are the Missings, who are another plains tribe. They live in the plains, but they are, they also had migrated many years back. And then there are the Deoris, then there are the Karbis, the Rabhas, and the Taifakes. So these are the 8 groups that comprise, as far as, the major groups are concerned. And the interesting thing is, like I said, because each of these groups have their own, everybody has their own ways of, weaving, number one, and their own dresses. So that's another level of complexity. So like, let's say, in the other part of India, we just said just sari, right? Sari is the dress, it is what is a woman wears. But here it is not the case. So it is mekhela chador for the Assamese plains, and so for the Ahoms, and also for the Missings. Of course, this is the main outfit for the women. And then there are some additional items, like in Assam and the Assamese plains, there's another item of clothing called the riha, which is a narrower piece of, like a chadar, but it's a narrower fabric, and it's want to give shape to the body and the structure to the whole outfit. So that is another one. Then there is, let's say, the Mishings or have another piece of fabric called the Gero, which is a richly decorated piece of cloth. And then, if we go over to the Bodos, they have now another different outfit for the women, which is called Dokhona, right? So it is a different kind of it's a piece of fabric which is very beautifully woven with extra warp technique, and it is a 3.5 meters by around the width is about 3.5 meters, and it is worn as a single piece of fabric on the body. And then there is an accompanying stole with it, and just not just one, quite a few. So that's another one. Then in the Karbis and the Rabas, so everyone has their own variation of the women's outfit. And then if we talk about in a similar way the men's outfit also, there are different kinds of outfit, although it is mostly like the equivalent of the dhoti, right? And something else like a jacket or like a shawl. So in every community, from what I've seen, there are 7 to 11 type of fabrics that are woven in every household. So some have 7, some have 8, so they comprise of the women's garment, the shawls that are used at home, because these some of these regions are pretty cold. Then there are men's garments, then the men's jackets, and then there are stoles, which are almost there in every community. And then there are some even like things like bed sheets and handkerchiefs. These also form a unique identity as far as textiles are concerned in this entire land. So there are about 74 or 75 different kind of unique fabrics which have a name, which have an identity, and which are woven in a particular way. There's a template for everything. It's not like you can just do whatever, there is a template, there's a way, there's a style, there's a technique. So it is that rich. And out of this, the Gamosa and mekhela chador we have discussed in detail, right? So this is the sort of the the complexity of the weaves and the richness of the weaves. And like I said, this is the number in terms of quantity. Now, if you ask me that what are the characteristics, I mean, if you can just give, let's a very high level. So I will only try. Now, what I did is, when I went with all these years of working, and when I did a little bit of research, I found that the ways in which, I mean, I think any textile for that matter, and especially for the textiles of Assam, can be differentiated are in three ways. One is the texture of the fabric, right? How well it is woven, how compact it is, and how fine it is or how coarse it is. That's one. Second is the ornamentation. What are the designs that I use? What are the motifs that I use, right? What are the styles of weaving that I use? So that's the ornamentation. And third is the colors. What colors I use? Are they colored, or are they richly colored, or are they naturally dyed, or what is? So these are the three main facets. First is the texture. So if I look at all the fabrics in Assam, all the fabrics have a sort of a texture which is like depending on the type of fabric that is used, they are mostly smooth. They are fine. They are, unlike some of the other parts of Northeast where they are sort of also, a little more thicker in certain places. In Assam, mostly the women, the outfits of the women are softer. The ones that are, let's say, like a shawl, etc., is a little coarse. So that's one. Then, let's say I'll just give you an example. So the gamosa is always woven with a reed size. That is, what it means is how many threads do you put in the warp, right? So that reed size, it is around 52 that's used in Assam. Okay. And the same, almost the same reed size is used for mekhela chador, because mekhela chador is also woven with a similar thickness of yarn, so which is around 40 or 60, and sometimes of late with 80s, 2x80s thread count also. So because of that, the reed size of 52 just works. So this is how, the fabrics mostly of mekhela chador and gamosa are woven, and then other fabrics are also sort of accordingly. For example, it's a shawl, then maybe the reed size would be even lesser because the yarns would be thicker. Maybe there would be 20s or 10s. So that is the kind of texture. Now, in terms of the ornamentation, the ornamentation of the fabrics is quite interesting because there are two distinct styles. One is the extra weft and the other is the extra warp. So extra weft is what you're wearing. This is a mishing sari, and so am I. We are both wearing the same type of extra weft sari. So which means that, ornamentation has been done with extra thread on the surface of the fabric, right? And it's a very unique kind of extra weft weaving because it has a lot of colors, like you can see on the border of my sari. Yeah. And for you also, there are 3 or 4 colors in your sari. So this is a unique identity or a characteristic of the weaving of Assam. And actually, extra weft is a prominent style of Assam weaving. So women can weave up to about 8 to 10 colors in a particular piece of fabric, which is quite a feat. So that's one thing. The second is the extra warp weaving, where you place several warps in a particular area and you create designs out of that. So if I have to refer to the textiles that we're talking about, the bodos and the rabhas, and a few others also, they have a great expertise with weaving with extra warp. So, in fact, I showed you this gamosa that my mother wove, right? So yeah. This, I just want to say that this is an extra warp design. So when I asked my mother, she told me that I put 8 warps, 8, the red thread she had put in 8 columns so as to be able to weave this design. So, so she, in her times, I think weaving, extra warp on a gamosa was also quite common, but nowadays it is not that common. And also weaving both the styles together, both extra warp and extra weft on the same piece of fabric. That is done by a few other groups also. So this is about the ornamentation. And the third is the dyeing, the colors. So textiles are from Assam now. You might have noticed that there is quite a bit of influence of white. So in fact, the Assamese plains, weavers have largely used a lot of white and a lot of colors on top of that. For example, even this sari is white, right? So white is a very white and off-white and cream have been quite often used, even for even in silk, even for bridal wear. The white, the normally off-white color has been used. I mean, until of course recently. Now it is no longer a practice. But, traditionally that's what's been used. And then that's for the plains, the weavers from the plains region. Now for the weavers of the hills and some of the other tribes in the plains, it's quite striking that a lot of colors are used. But if you look at the colors, they're mostly the primary colors, like the black, the dark blue, the red, the rich red. If you look at this piece of fabric just behind me, you can see that it is woven in 3 colors, white, black, and red. I mean, it's on white, it's on cream, and with black and red. So this is a very characteristic style of the mishing extra weft weaving. And also, yeah, black is a very important color for the mishings. They have a lot of beautiful weaving done on the black color. For the bodos, the color yellow is very, very auspicious. In fact, the dokhonas are almost mandatorily woven in yellows. And, so yeah, mostly the primary colors have been used. So this is about the colors. And yes, a lot of natural dyes have been used over a period of time. Lac, manjastha, turmeric, marigold, tea leaves, etc. And now, of course, over a period of the last 20 to 30 years, chemical dyes have been used as well. And especially in the commercial clusters, like the silk mekhela chadars and saris, they are mandatorily using the chemical dyes, right? So the silk has been brought from either locally or from outside, and the dyeing is done locally, and the weavers are weaving with that yarn. So this is about the kind of practices across the different communities. So suffice to say that the fabrics that are woven for the climatic conditions of the region with the yarns that are locally found.
Sure. So, could you also talk us through how your organization here, what kind of intervention has it done with the women weavers in Assam for them to gradually move from just mekhela chadars and gamochas to saris?
The history is very rich with weaving practices, and women have been weaving. Like I said, it's mandatory in every home in the villages, of course. And there's a lot of silks that are found. But with all this, so it almost seems like the entire ecosystem for what is required of a great weaving landscape are all there. And there's a lot of work, and women are busy with work. All of that is there. I'm neither a designer, as in trained to be a designer, or otherwise from the industry. This is an opportunity for the women of that region, with whatever they have. If they have a few more enablers in their system, probably they could do more than what they are doing right now. And that was really the whole idea behind this foraying into this space when I did about 8 years back. So every house is a loom, every woman is a weaver. There is a good abundance of yarns. So I thought, hey, if we could create something out of this that could provide a better opportunity for the women, why not? And that was really the idea. So what we had done is we also realized that just putting women in a factory type of a surrounding and getting them to work also probably would not be feasible, because the women again are responsible for their own homes, right? They have to take care of the home. They even go to the fields. Weaving was never income generating. It's not a livelihood. It was more of a hobby. It was more of a mandatory activity in every home. Now, in Assam and I'm sure across India, we have a lot of cooperative groups, right, and self-help groups which have been. There were thousands of groups which were registered, but hardly any of them were functional. So I found a handful, and I started contacting them and understanding what is it that they were doing. So I found a few things. I found that sometimes the skill of the women were not enough. The entire linkage in terms of the yarns, etc. So as you would know, a weaver, how their access is to the nearest market, the local heart or the market, right? And if there is a good quality of yarn there, great for her. But if there is a quality of yarn that is, what is available is what she brings home and does. And oftentimes they were not the best quality yarns, and some of them were even synthetic yarns. So we said we would provide for a good quality yarn being made available to them through a negotiated rate, with a large yarn supplier. Now, if they did not have their own source of yarn, let's say if they were spinning eri in their home, they were able to take that yarn. But we had also identified other sources of silk and cotton for them. Third is the entire market, of course, which is very important. That how we are going to be able to create a new identity for what they are making. So that is the creation of a market, the creating of a kind of product which people love. So we said that okay, so the product needs changing. We need to create a more sellable product with the same skills. Then fourth is the entire process of helping them with the the finances and the entire mentorship that comes with it, and the whole hand holding part, and all of this is backed by our own sort of design aesthetic. So we had to make an intervention for in terms of the thickness of the yarn, and we had to source that yarn. It had to be a good quality yarn, right? It had to be available, and it had to be available to them directly. So we did all of this, and so we started weaving a different kind of saris based on the textile practices of different communities. So we essentially started working with the women of the Assamese Plains communities, and the Mishing communities, and later the Bodo community. So these are the three main communities we are working with. And what we had done was that we, like I said, we first trained them in various aspects of weaving, etc. And then we gave them the quality yarn. Then we gave them a design template that this is how the layout has to be done, etc. Now, when we were doing that, we realized that the looms were at times not, sort of tailored for the kind of products that we wanted to make. So there we had to make another intervention of, changing some parts of the loom, or widening the loom, or even buying a new loom. So that was a different kind of an intervention. But some of the looms were fine for weaving saris. And so that was, so if you can understand, Kamala, I'm not just talking about, a design intervention. Design intervention would be where we are saying, okay, let's change the layout here, let's change the colors here. But, let's say they were already, kind of adept at making a sari. They weren't. I mean, it's the first time they ever tried making a sari, and, it has its own learning curve, right? And so that's what we, sort of did over about 3 to 4 years. And then we started, obviously, taking them to the market, and we had quite an, interesting response. So the high point about the work that we tried to do with them, we found out that they are not very comfortable with fine silks like mulberry and muga, because they work at home, right? And our whole approach is towards creating sustainable and predictable work for them based on the traditional, sort of skills that they have. So what we said, fine, if, we tried to then say that, hey, let's do most of our work with cotton and eri silk, because they are very comfortable. And some of the work, which some of the weavers are comfortable working on silks like mulberry and muga, we left it for a few select weavers. But the majority of them weave on cotton. And it is also an expression that I think, really worked well for them, because they are more comfortable. It is, sort of also low on capital in terms of the cost of the fiber, the yarn. And also, there is a rich cotton weaving history of the region. We might tend to think that silks really dominate, but cotton is also an important element as far as the yarns go. So we were able to revive a whole lot of motifs that had gone out, because women, stopped making those elaborate motifs for their home use, right? So because there were no takers, and many of the looms have jacquard, computerized design sort of abilities fitted on them. The jacquard designs are very much, in use. But the home-based weavers had no access to jacquard, because their looms are not fitted with the jacquard machine. So they were very happy to weave what they knew, what they wore earlier, what their mothers wore earlier, what their grandmothers wore earlier, and we were able to work on a lot of motifs that had gone out of practice. Initially we started out with structured saris as well, because at that time they were not mentally prepared to move over to weaving a full 48 inches width sari, because mekhela chadars are 39 inches wide, right? So to go that extra 9 inches with a throw shuttle loom was also a big challenge. So we had to sort of work their way through that, help them. We also fitted the other thing, yes, I forgot to mention that in many of the looms we had fitted with fly shuttle looms, so that they do not have to sort of work only with a throw shuttle, which is in fact quite painful, for weaving extra, inches. So that's how we sort of help them. And so it's been a long process. It's a great leap from, having woven only clutch others and gamosas at a community level, to weaving saris now at a community level. And the women love it, actually. love weaving saris, and they sometimes they prefer weaving saris, over other fabrics.
Thank you so much, Janali. That was very interesting because, and thanks to people like you who intervene, that we get access to some beautiful saris like this, and we are able to appreciate the weaves of Assam. So, thank you very much for a very interesting session on Assamese weaves. And we will catch up again with you to understand the silks of Assam, because Assam, as you know, is obviously very well known for its silks. So we'll catch up on another episode for the Assamese silks. Thank you so much for joining with us today on the Weaves of Assam. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for watching our weekly episodes on Touring Talkies. Do stay tuned for further updates on our future episodes on our Facebook page and Instagram page. Do leave your comments, suggestions, and feedback on this video right below the video. Thank you very much.